What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Today, we're going to explore the Asian mother and father. You see, yesterday we talked about the white daddy, right? And the complicit white mama and their family dynamics, right? Because keep in mind, I'm going to talk about every single race and their issues because keep in mind, white people and Asian people and everybody think they can just talk about African Americans, right? We're a buffet of topics, right? So if it's fair that white podcasters can literally have whole podcasts dedicated to what's going on with black people, right? Asian and Hispanics and all of them, they got all these podcasts, and the topic's always about what black people are doing, what we not doing, who we supporting, who we not supporting, right? What's the dynamics in our family and why they have podcasts where they regurgitate and reaffirm false stereotypes about us, and then they talk about it because they ain't got nothing else to talk about. So I'm gonna talk about them. It's fair and square. It's good for the goose, good for the gander. So let's go ahead and look at these Asian fathers. Let's see what kind of people they're producing. Because the thing is, we know in real life, black people are the most present fathers of all demographics. Black men are the most present fathers in all demographics. Black moms show the most love and care of all mamas. It's clear that the black family got it figured out, right? Even though institutions outside of the black family make it their point to destroy the black family for a reason. There's a reason why the black family is so important to destroy and disrupt the cohesion of the black family, right? It's because these other groups don't have what we have. Therefore, they see what we have. They understand the power of what we have. Therefore, they deem to destroy it. But let's see what they got. Let's see what kind of men and women they're producing, because the family is a manufacturing plant for these people that we have to deal with. These POCs and white folks we got to deal with. So we did the white man, right? We're going to keep doing the white people. Right? We're going to do as there's been decades upon decades upon decades of pontificating about black folks. So I got the right to do the same goddamn thing, right? So I'm going to talk about white folks. I'm going to talk about all the people that like to talk about us. And we're going to look at them, their families, and what their children are saying about them. How their children deem their parents. Because if you type in black parents in YouTube or TikTok, you're going to see wonderful stories. When you type in Asian or black or white people experience with black parents, black foster care, black cookouts, black friends, there's always something positive, love, and fulfilling, something that fulfills their soul, and they can't even explain it. From the food to the dance, from the care, from the hugs, from the affirmations, even when they have a black male mentor, right? They get real father figure, real empathy, real love, real parenting, real cohesion, real ingredients with seasoning to build a empathetic, smart, intelligent human being. Let's see what these Asian people are producing in their families. Let's see how good these Asian fathers are. Let's see how good these Asian moms are. Let's see what kind of children they produce. All right, let's pay attention to that and see if that has anything to do with their behavior or how they act with other groups. Anyway, you tell me what you think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something. Teach them. I'm out. I don't want to put the camera in that face, but you see that white lady right there? Oh, let me show you something. We're going to zoom in. See that white lady? Y'all know I talk loud, right? Even if there's white people there, I be talking, right? And I don't care that they're there because, let them hear me. That lady heard me talking about white folk. And guess what? She agreed with everything. She stopped me, because white folks will stop you and tell you what they think. She stopped me and said everything that I was saying was right. She said she was just telling her child the other day. Well, I think she said yesterday. She was just telling her child yesterday everything I was just saying about this topic, right? So I know I'm going the right way, all right? I know I'm a black guy and I say things that seems incendiary, but the truth seems incendiary. The truth hurts because it's something that we all collectively run from, all right? And that white woman, all right, understood the truth because she light-skinned, all right, because she lived around black folk. Clearly, she lived around black folks, so obviously she got some soul and she's got some seasoning in her. The seasoning done fell inside her. See, that's the good thing I like about the white folks in Maryland. A lot of them got seasoning because they are lucky enough to be around us and get empathy and love from the workplace, whether it be a coworker that they have, whether it be somebody they went to school with or something like that, or a friend or whatever. If they are forced to associate with black people in black communities, they tend to develop seasoning within their soul, right? That way, when they hear me speak like this, right, they agree with me instead of just getting offended because I'm telling a truth. So I just wanted to say that.
The problem with brown parents is that if you make the tiniest mistake, they might just give you generational trauma. All right, but I realized this the hard way when my parents did some shit to me that I'll never fucking forget. Tell me why. It's my junior year of high school, the day before school's out for winter break, right? I'm sitting in my last block, AP Chemistry. The teacher put on the Polar Express on the smartboard, because we finished our work early. When he dropped some news on me that I was not ready for. Okay? I'm just chilling at my desk watching this movie. Honestly, it was kind of mid, but I'm glancing up at the clock, right? Waiting for the bell to ring so I can get out of here. I'm excited as fuck, okay? I don't celebrate Christmas, but me and the boys, we're gonna hop on a Minecraft server and not get off for the next 2 weeks, all right? We've been planning this for fucking months at this point. All right, when my teacher looks up from his desk and he's like, all right, guys, I'm not gonna lie, I almost forgot, but I gotta hand you guys your report cards for this semester. All right, I don't think too much of it at the time, right? I'm a smart kid, Asian. I get all A's. It is what it is. Okay, but that's not how this went this time. I go back to what I'm doing, right? I'm watching the movie, glancing up at the clock, looking at my phone, looking at my Chromebook, checking the time on 3 different devices because I'm just itching, fiending to get out of class so I can hop on the game with the boys. Okay, when the teacher gets up from his desk, starts walking around, dropping report cards off one by one. But then he gets to my desk. All right, he looks down at me and he's like, hey, Moo, I just wanted to say, I know you're a smart kid. You care about your grades, but whatever happens, don't let this ruin your break, okay? Just have fun. All right, forget about school. What? What? Why is he talking like that? All right, he drops my report card off, moves on to the next kid. All right, I start ripping my report card open, right? What's going on here? All right, I'm scanning through my grades. All right, I got an A in English. I got an A in biology, an A in AP Human. But then I got to my chemistry grade. I got a C. All right, but it wasn't even a high C. It was a 72. How could this happen? There has to be a mistake, right? I immediately get on my Chromebook. I'm checking my grades. Gang, the last test I took, I bombed that shit. I thought I did great on it. All right, but immediately I'm getting worried at this point because if I take this report card home and my parents see it, I might get disowned. They might send me back to my home country. They might revoke my breathing privileges. Okay, but it ended up being so much worse than I could have imagined. I quickly slip my report card in my book bag. 15 minutes later, the bell rings. All right, I sprint out of class, make my way to the car. I'm driving my way back home, trying not to think too much of it. All right, all I got to do is just make sure my parents don't find out. How hard could that be, right? I walk into my house, set my book bag down right by the front door in its usual spot. Okay, first mistake. All right, to my left, my mom's making some food. To my right, my dad's in the living room on the couch watching some soccer. My mom pipes up. She's like, "Oh, hey, beta, how are you? How was school?" Great. It was great, Mom. Perfect, actually. All right, but that's when my dad pipes up and says some shit that I was not trying to hear. He's like, "Beta, by the way, did you get your report card for this semester? I don't think I've seen it yet." Oh, about that. Yeah, they're gonna give us our report cards at the end of winter break when we get back to school. Second mistake. But beta, they give it to you before winter break every year. Why is it different this time? Oh, my teacher's just late with grading. All right, and I sprint up the steps, sprint up the stairs into my room, slam it shut behind me. Okay, I'm thinking the coast is clear at this point. There's no way he's suspicious, right? I sit down on my desk, boot up the PC. I'm texting all my friends, yo, boys, hop on the game. This winter break is about to be a blast. Okay, but it was anything but a fucking blast. I boot up Minecraft on my PC, get on a Discord call with all the boys. We're talking about all the things, we're going to build in this Minecraft world, all the things we're going to achieve over the next 2 weeks. Genuinely excited, okay? We're living every 16, 17-year-old kid's dream right now. All right, when 2 hours later, my mom calls me down for dinner. Okay, I tell the boys, yo, I'll be right back. I make my way down the stairs over to the dining table. Everybody's already sitting down, right? My dad, my mom, my 2 sisters, my little brother. But they're acting kind of strange, right? Everybody's just kind of silent, staring down at their plates, picking at their food. Okay, 5 minutes later, I'm like, hey, is everybody okay? How was your days? All right, but then my dad looks up at me with an expression that I've never seen before. He's like, How was our day? Beta, how was your day? What? My day was fine. Are you okay? Am, am I okay? Are you okay? Yeah, Beta, we did all this work for you. We brought you to this country, give you these opportunities, and then you're gonna do this to us? Dad, what did I do? What did I do? Right, then he reaches under his chair, right, and he whips out my report card and he slams it down onto the dining table. Okay, all the silverware, the plates is shaking and shit. He looks up at me and I'm hoping and praying he doesn't say the one thing. I'm hoping and praying. All right, when he's like, Beta, every day for the rest of winter break, you will study for 3 hours every day. Okay, not bad. All right, as long as I can play the game, I'm good. All right, but that's when my dad did some shit that I will never forget. He slams his fork down onto the dining table and he gets up faster than I've ever seen this 50-year-old man get up in my life. Okay, the chair behind him flies back, right? Falls down to the floor. Everybody jumps in their seats, okay, in genuine fear. Already, he circles around the dining table. He walks behind me. I'm getting chills and shit. All right, and then he starts walking up the stairs. No, not this. Anything but this. All right, I get up from my chair. You know, I'm walking behind him. I'm like, Baba, please, Baba, please, Baba, please. Anything but this. It's like, Beta, there's only one way you will learn your lesson. Right, he walks into my room. He swings the door open, walks over to my PC. I'm like, Baba, no, beat me or something. Send me back to my country or something. Take my life or something after winter break, bro. Please, but not this. Please. He's like, Beta, you've left me no choice. All right, he walks over to my desk, you know, gets down on his knees, and he unplugs everything. Grabs my PC, starts walking out of my room. I'm begging, pleading for my life. Right, he throws it into the back of his car, and he drives off. Gang, you best believe I never went home with anything less than a 95 after that.
Talk about some of the toxic gender roles and pressures imposed on men in POC cultures, specifically South Asian culture. Now, typically it's the oldest son who, once he's old enough or once he's forced to start working, is expected to be the sole income provider for his parents the rest of his life. And sometimes men do have to give up their ambitions and dreams in order to provide for their family. Because in traditional culture, your parents are apparently too old to work once they're 40. So I do feel for some of them, especially those who feel helpless because they were given these responsibilities by default just because they're men. However, the problems in their culture arise because there are various routes that this might go. Either the South Asian men will have tunnel vision on only their parents and completely neglect the wife and kids, in which case I'm like, why'd you get married in the first place? Or they're aware of what's going on and they want to be there for their wife and kids, but because of pressure from their parents, they can't be there for them in the best way. And a lot of them are made to feel selfish for not being selfless. And the purpose of this video and all my other videos isn't to do away with their South Asian culture. It's to open up a dialogue so that we can preserve the most healthy version of our culture. So I want to talk about some of the toxic gender roles and
If you grew up with a narcissistic Asian parent, there's a reason why it was so hard to name it. Growing up in an Asian household to immigrant parents, I was taught that respecting my parents was non-negotiable, that their word was final, that questioning them was shameful, and that my needs always came second to the family's honor. So when my mom's behavior became cruel and toxic, I didn't have the language to name it because I learned that in my culture, this was just how Asian parents are. But now I realize that what I experienced was not normal, and it took me years to understand why it was so hard to see that. Confucian philosophy, which influences many cultures, teaches filial piety, which is the idea that children owe their parents absolute respect, obedience, and care, regardless of how they are treated. Confucius taught that children are seen as extensions of their parents, not as separate individuals, and that the family's honor and public image matters far more than the child's private pain. And then there's a deep cultural belief that you can never repay the debt you owe your parents for bringing you into this world. Does any of this sound familiar? Now, these are beautiful values in healthy families, but placed into the hands of a narcissistic parent, they can become tools used for control. Filial piety becomes a reason to never question abuse. Upholding the family's honor becomes a reason to to stay ashamed and keep secrets. The debt you owe your parents becomes a reason to keep giving even when you are being mentally, emotionally, or physically damaged. And because these values are so culturally embedded, narcissistic behavior in Asian cultures becomes completely unchallenged and unnamed for generations. I want you to know that you are not disrespecting your culture by naming what happened to you. You are not a bad daughter or a son for recognizing that love should not feel like fear. Honoring your culture and protecting yourself are not mutually exclusive. And finally, your healing is not betraying your roots. You are simply reclaiming who you are meant to be, a whole, lovable, brilliant, magnetic, and amazing person, your best self. Does this resonate with you? Save this video if you found it helpful and follow along for more real talk on healing from survival mode.
Why are dads constantly sending money to their extended family back in the home country and not prioritizing their nuclear family that's here and struggling? My name is Summer Harwin. I'm a licensed South Asian therapist, and let me give you the answer to your questions as to why is your dad so obsessed with his side of the family. There's an element of entitlement here that, you know, my kids and my nuclear family are here because of me and I've contributed to their existence. So I have fulfilled my duty to them in my life. And that's why I do not need to, as a man or as a provider, do anything to seek their approval. But when it comes to his extended family, like his mom, his brothers, all the aunts and uncles, everyone who he's left behind to pursue this life, it changes a lot of things because they are his family, but somehow they're still a little bit separate from him, that he has to fight his way into the family by seeking their validation and approval, whether that's through finances, whether that's through unconditional positive regard and, you know, all the validation, all the emotions, all the money, everything. This is a place of struggle because you might be thinking, okay, so if he views us as himself, doesn't he love himself enough to treat himself well if we are an extension of him? And the answer is complex and not really. Your dad isn't looking for self-fulfillment and happiness. He is looking for approval to validate his existence that he feels like he cannot get within his nuclear family. I'll give you an analogy of dating someone. So if you're dating a guy and you know the guy who kind of gives you attention but not all the attention, and you have to really try really hard to get on his radar, and that satisfaction, that dopamine hit really hits. That is a little bit of the familial dynamic that we're looking at when we look at Desi dads and their dynamic with their extended family. You're probably thinking, okay, fine, whatever. He thinks this way, he's acting this way, but why? Probably because he had to fight for validation when he was a kid, or because it was inflated in himself what parents and parents' approval means versus, oh, that's your family and you need to take care of your family and your family this, your family that, and your family needs to do this for us. When there's such a separation and lack of homogeny, somehow, some way, your brain creates kind of this mechanisms to identify where you're gonna get the most amount of validation from that makes you feel good versus where you're not gonna get your pleasure centers stimulated. I know it sounds so chemical and sciencey, but ultimately, that's what it is. And if you're going to ask what makes you qualified enough to talk about all of this, I'm a licensed South Asian therapist. This is this field I specialize in. I can go into more detail about this as well because this is a little bit of a snippet of what all of this means. It's complex and it's dynamic. And probably the next question you have is like, okay, if my dad's like this, what do I do? How do I improve our relationship? Family therapy would really help you, but maybe a part 2 would too. So comment down below and like and follow.
This month actually marks 1 year since I disowned my parents, and coincidentally, it is also the most peaceful year I've ever had in my entire life. The decision I made last year was obviously something that I did not make lightly. I went through years of abuse before I finally realized that this is not the life that I want to live. My mother was very physically abusive to me since the ripe old age of like 3. I remember that's when I made my first accusation against her. Social services did nothing back then. And my dad wasn't that great either, by the way. He was abusive towards my mum. And then at the age of 17, I had to go into foster care because he tried to sell me. So that's what my parents are like. As a child, I was encouraged not to tell people about the experiences I was having at home because, you know, what will people say? We were supposed to portray ourselves as the perfect family in our community, but really it was just a way for them to ensure that they can continue the abuse without anyone ever finding out. And I didn't tell anyone until I was 17. And that year I also went into foster care because I had the courage to speak up about the abuse. And while yes, back then it was so traumatizing to go through that, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be a foster kid. But it was honestly the best thing that has ever happened to me. I love my foster parents. I am still in touch with them to this day. And having my foster parents and my boyfriend's parents, I don't actually feel the absence of my parents in my life anymore. I just feel so at peace. I was really terrified of what would happen to my health if I stayed in that situation, because my dad's been abusive to my mum their entire marriage. And I've seen what it's done to her health. She's not healthy. She's not healthy. I know it's as a result of how she has been treated by her husband. And I just knew that if I stayed in that environment any longer, I would turn out like my mum. I can't have that happening to me. I'm 24, but I feel like my life has just begun. I'm not constantly stressed out anymore. I don't have to worry about upsetting them anymore. I don't have to worry about what other people will think of me anymore. And I already know I'm gonna get a lot of hate on this video for saying that I'm happier without my parents, but I can't help it because it's the truth. I understand that they're living life for the first time, but I am also living life for the first time. And even I knew at my age that beating up children was not normal. Selling your daughter was not normal. So you can make excuses for them as much as you want, but I know I made the right decision for myself. I grew up being constantly afraid of my parents, and on a lot of occasions afraid for my life as well. Now knowing that I will never have to go through that again is really nice.
Okay, so let's talk about something a little different, right? I was on this Reddit thread about Asian parent stories, and I started noticing this pattern forming with a lot of Asian people, whether they're Korean or Chinese or Vietnamese, Cambodian, Laotian, Thai, the list goes on, right? And generally speaking, a lot of Asian children, and that could be anywhere from my age, the 50s, all the way down, were having trouble with their older Asian parents. And the pattern is generally twofold. There's two types of parents. There are the Asian parents who are, I would call them war children, or grew up in wartime. And then secondly, the abused children, right? So let's talk about the first group, the war children, right? And these would be the ones who would be roughly around 60 to 80, maybe 90 years old. And they come from the old country, like old Korea, old Vietnam, old China, it's Hong Kong, etc., right? And why do I call them the war children? Because this group of fairly elderly Asian parents lived through war. They were in the war as children, as teenagers, and they saw some of the really bad stuff that happened. And or they might have been shortly after that. They were born in the period of Reconstruction, meaning that everything's blown to crap, right? Nothing's functioning correctly. And by the time these kids made their teens and 20s, maybe the country was kind of moving forward again. But they suffered immensely because they maybe lost their parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, to all the tragedies of war. And what that does is it scars the psyche of people, right? And because they're Asian, they haven't had, there's no social outlet for therapy or talking things through. They just bottle it up. So in turn, what do? They become abusive to their own children, right? Because when you try to live through wartime, it's all about survival. It's not really caring about people's feelings. It's getting everything for yourself. So you'll notice with like more elderly war children, Asians, they tend to be extremely self-centered, extremely selfish, and even to the point of, I don't want to say evil, but narcissistically evil, because it's so much about them, right? That they don't have any regard for anybody else, right? And that's kind of what happens when you're just trying to survive, right? The second group is what I call the abused children parents, Asian parents. And this is the children whose parents might have been the war children, most likely, right? And most of these abusive parents, I would say, would probably be Gen X and maybe the millennials, right? People in their 40s and 50s. And the reason why is because their parents treated them so harshly, right? We may talk about tiger parents. That was a thing a few years ago, where they were forced to like study hard. They were still beaten at home, right? Their parents were heavily controlling about their life and who they're friends with in college. And then now as adults, right, they are just so tightly wound because their parents were so abusive to them, right? Both physically, emotionally, all that stuff, right? And when I use the word abusive, let me go on a sidetrack. I'm not talking about abusive from the standpoint, I'm talking about just inflicting pain on your children, right? That's abusive, right? There is something called discipline, which I'm all for Asian discipline, where your kid does something wrong, you make sure they're accountable for it. But abusive homes is where abuse is there's literally no reason for abuse. It's almost like a weird form of entertainment for some of these people. And that's the second group. So as an Asian father now, I'm Gen X, right? I had the war children parents, right? Who also suffered a lot of physical abuse too, right? So I kind of got the combination. And as a kid, I got beaten a lot, right? Not a lot of explanations. I knew when I was beaten because I was being a bad kid. And sometimes I would just get beaten because they had a bad day. And how do you overcome that as an Asian person, right? Maybe in your late teens, maybe you're an adult, right? And you're also forced to reconcile dealing with your parents now because they're old and they need help. And you have this familial love for them, even though they weren't the best parents at all. My advice as an Asian dad is to recognize the abuse that you went through, right? I'm not excusing it, but at the same time, maybe also learn where they came from, what kind of life they had as a child, right? And there are moments most people have with their abusers of just talking things through, or talking things out, not from an accusatory standpoint, even as simple as like, tell me what it was like growing up in 1960s Hong Kong. Tell me what it was like during World War II or Korea or Vietnam. What was it like for you, right? And when your parents tell you their stories, I'm not saying it's going to make their abuse right, but you're going to gain some crazy insights into what kind of life they had to live as children or as young teens, and how they came to the conclusion they came to and how they resolve conflicts. And it's all not the best. It's not healthy, right? But by seeing that, you might even pity them a little bit, right? And I think in the instance of like my dad and mom, the more I learned about them as I got older, the less angry I got at them, because I understood, here's the fact that, hurt people hurt people. Now, in my instance, how did I overcome that, right? I think some of that was just forgiveness. As I got older, understanding where they came from. But for me, part of it for my Christian faith of just for being forgiving toward people is also making the mental change in my own head of not to be that person or not to continue that cycle, right? Because I saw aspects of that with how I dealt with my kids. I was pretty harsh with my kids. I knew I didn't want to abuse them. I knew I wanted to discipline them within reason, right? But there were times, even my wife, who's British and white, brought up, why do you talk to them that way? Why do you have that perspective? And when she did that, it forced me to kind of think about, why do I feel this way, right? And I'm fortunate because I was able to change my mind or change my behavior, change my pattern. And that would be my encouragement for you if you're watching this video, is to find a place of forgiveness, learn where your folks are coming from, and change your pattern of behavior, right? Before you wind up becoming them unknowingly. I hope that was helpful for you. I'm your Gen X Asian dad, Percy. Have a good day.
So I used to get called fat all the time growing up. Now I get called fat every 3 to 4 months. And that happens. My response now is, well, you look fat. I used to get told I'm not attractive enough. I'll probably never find a man. And now, because I do have a husband, I get told I need to put on more makeup for my husband. I need to look better for my husband. My response is, why don't you fix your fucking teeth? I used to get told wild. I know some of you can relate to this because they go from fat to you're too skinny and you look sick and you look ill, you don't look well, you need to eat more. It's just wild, right? And my response is like, get the fuck out of my house. It took a while to get to this point where I had to stand up for myself, call them out. My thing is, you are not walking perfection unless you can be what it is you're criticizing. Like, if you're going to sit there and call me fat and you're skinny, that's one thing, but you cannot be fat and call me fat. You're an average looking person and tell me that I'm unattractive. Like, that shit don't make no sense to me. So I started calling them out, and guess what? It didn't go away. It's not as much criticism. This all started happening in my late 20s as I got older and I was on my own. So it did take a while to speak up like that. But if you're very young, like somebody in high school dealing with this or in college, yeah, you feel trapped because you are relying on these people to
basically survive and keep you alive. So it's different, and that's a video for later.
When I was 6, my father, in a fit of jealous rage, decided to burn our house down, and it was so intense at the time that it even made the papers. He was always a drunk and a deadbeat, so one day he just decided that my mum was having an affair, so then he ran from our house to our grandmother's house when we were having like a Sunday gathering, and confronted my mum in front of everyone. It wasn't real, so there was nothing to admit. But then, for some reason, it kept escalating to the point where he decided to burn the motorbike that my mum drove us on. And yeah, before the firefighters could get, it also just burned down like the majority of the ground floor of the house. It left a very prominent marking of just how dysfunctional my family was. And then, you know, the beating and the abuse never really stopped until they finally divorced each other like 10 years after that. And I still resent my mum sometimes for not cutting the ties earlier. I think for a lot of Vietnamese women or, you know, Vietnamese households, the idea of a complete family, there always has to be a father figure in the household. So I think that was part of the reason why like it took her so long to finally, you know, cut that tie. But my mum, she was the breadwinner of the family, and she was also the person that we came to for advices and for comfort. So yeah, I think by the time that like they finally divorced, we no longer registered him as a father figure. But I think in the end, like, it also put a very different strain in my mother and I's relationship, in the sense that I don't see relationship in a healthy ways, and sometimes I blame my mother for that. But also, yeah, I think people in abusive relationships like sometimes just can't quite see an out until it's too late. So I do feel for her for, you know, not being able to get out of it soon enough. In a way, like I'm afraid of, you know, starting my own family, because what if like I have already instilled those kind of trauma and abuse, and unknowingly I will bestow that upon my offspring.
My dad used to do this thing where he'd get his 2 fingers, put it against my forehead, and just like shove my head and say,
Really?
in Korean, "What are you gonna do? Huh? What are you gonna do? Huh?"
Wow.
And I'm like 6 years old. I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck you think I'm gonna do, motherfucker? Right? No, it's funny now, but I was just like,
Wow.
he would bully the fuck out of me, and I felt so helpless, you know? And I think that's why I like did wrestling in high school and like started working out, and I was like, nobody's gonna fuck with me like the way my dad
Yeah.
fucked with me.
Oh.
Right? And when I see dudes bully other fucking helpless people, I'll fucking wild out, man.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not threatening somebody that's not even there. I swear to God, you motherfuckers, if you do that.
Disclaimer, everything that I've ever been through in my entire life so far could be put in a book. A very, very thick book. Before I woke up this morning, I had a nightmare. And luckily, my alarm clock woke me up right on the dot before I was about to jump over that kitchen table and choke the shit out of my mom. And it was the one, like, not even the first dream I've ever had like this. I'd say it's the one of many dreams I've had like this. I'm Asian. I'm also the first generation of my family who was born here in America. So growing up between Asian like cultural values and American values, they tend to clash when you're the first person in your family to be born in America. And let's just say life has not been easy. In my dream, I was talking to my family about my divorce, and my mom's over here like, oh, you know, your ex, Tim, sent me money, sent me $60, and I paid him back. And I was like, why are you asking my ex for money? You know, when I'm over here talking about my divorce, and, you know, it led to the whole choosing sides thing. I was like, why do you do this all the freaking time? Like, when you know I'm going through something hard with this person, you always choose their side. Over mine. She did this once in my first marriage. He was like an abusive alcoholic, and every time, like, you know, he couldn't get his way with me and stuff, he would call her, and then she would like scold me. I'm like, he's drunk and he's trying to pick a fight with me for no reason. I'm trying to like stay away and get him to like cool down. Like, that is why I lock myself in my room. That is why I say the things that I say to him. And it sounded like in my dream that she was believing everything that he was telling her and not believing my side of the story. And I'm just like, I was so fed up. I looked at her straight in the face as she's like playing games on her phone, because she likes slot games. She's addicted to gambling. I was like, you have ruined my life. I said some things that I normally would say every time I get into a fight with her, and she just had no emotion on her face. She's just like not even looking at me. Not taking me seriously. I'm telling you, you guys, it's hard to heal from like parental trauma, especially when you're in your 30s and you didn't realize that that was the issue in your life until you were in your late 20s. Now that I have a son, I know what the answer is. I'm just waiting for the right time to do it, because I'm still going through my divorce, and once everything is over, I'll get like a better idea of like what resources I have, because being a single mom is hard. I don't know how people find a place to live, find like these really good paying jobs, and my job is like the new minimum wage, you know? $20 is like nothing. And I don't have time to like go back to school or like, you know, learn something new. I want to. I really want to. But then I don't want to add more debt on top of like the debt I already have for school. You know, the goal is to, you know, buy some land for like under 50 grand, which is possible. I just have to move a little bit further away from where I live. I can finally live in my tiny home dreams. Those cost less than $100,000, which is really nice. I've been looking at a lot of tiny homes in like plots of land for sale, because that is something I really want to do for me and my son. I really don't care about living in like a brick house anymore. I just want to be far away from my family, where I know he won't be affected by all this like I was. And I see it happen a lot now, and there's nothing I can do to stop it, because when I'm at work, I don't know what goes on. And I'm looking into getting him into daycare pretty soon, because that's like step one to getting him away from the way my family treats him when I'm not around. So it's just, it's a lot. But I mean, My dream pretty much reminds me of like a battle I will never win, pretty much. It's just something that I'll always have to deal with for the rest of my life if I choose to be around it. But enough's enough, and I'm just done. Like, some people put up with it because they love their family members, and I'm like, I love my family members, but I respect myself more now in my 30s as a mom with a son. Like, I want him to be different. I want him to have a better life. So, yeah.
I kind of had to treat myself tonight. I went all out shopping. Like, I needed to really be my best friend right now. Kind of had a negative interaction with my mom. And today I just needed to be my own best friend. I needed to like go out and calm myself down and tell myself that I'm worthy, that I'm not doing anything wrong, and that I am so loved. So I haven't spoken to my parents in person in more than 2 years now. My mom has texted me here and there, but just like, happy birthday, whatever. Last time I had an interaction with my dad is when he has said an insane amount of hurtful things to me. Things that a parent should never say to their child. But hey, I'm Filipino. This is why I make all these Filipino toxic videos. But I feel like I'm in a part of my life now where I am no longer a victim. I'm no longer going to play the victim. I sometimes think that what if your parents doesn't have the father and mother title to them? Are they good people? Would you still be hanging out with them? And most of my answers are no, for me at least. The last thing my dad has ever told me, and I remember this, was in English, translated was, leave my house, you are worthless anyway. He said that like 3 times. It's much more worse in Tagalog. He was like, lumayas ka na dito, wala ka namang kwenta. And throughout my life, I've kind of grown up in that kind of emotionally charged, emotionally abusive household where we were constantly told that we were worthless. And the emotional abuse was kind of justified because they were great providers. And I think I got hit hard being the eldest. The amount of responsibility on my shoulder was so overwhelming. I remember I don't know if I was going to live a life of my own. I don't know if ever I'm going to be able to have a life that I want. And I was battling the coming out phases of my life as well. That last interaction with my dad definitely set the tone for how I'm going to treat myself. Because I told myself I will never ever let anyone talk to me like that ever again. It doesn't matter if they have the title of your father or your mother. Anyways, so my tita invited us for Christmas this year. We haven't had a Christmas family in a long time because of COVID. And I really wanted to go. I really loved our Christmas gatherings. I had to tell my tita that I can't go because I have a really bad relationship with my dad right now. And my mom texted me and she said, you should come. And I said, well, I haven't heard from him. And I told her all this, that what I'm telling you guys, that I was very hurt from what he said. And you know, I haven't heard an apology or I haven't heard him reach out or anything. That was kind of like a moment right there. I was kind of giving my mom a moment right there to really truly understand what's going on. And I was hoping for her to be like, you know what? I'll talk to your dad. Maybe he'll talk to you. You know what she said? It's like very typical Filipino. She said, okay lang, ingat kayo. She's pretty much like, okay, be safe. And I sent her like a paragraph. And I was like, it's 2 years. It's been 2 years. And the crazy thing about it is that I grew up being the one who always apologizes first. Because in the Asian community, Filipino community, the parents are never wrong. I really wanted to go because the food is going to be bomb. But I think I'd rather choose self-love right now. It's just so crazy. These are moments that makes me hate being Filipino.
But when I was a kid, my parents, they just weren't good parents. Not only were they abusive, they were very controlling. So if we didn't do what they told us to do, they would say that, oh, they pay for our electricity, our water, they put a roof over our heads. Basic stuff that a parent should be doing for their kids anyways. They would use that to control us. So by the time I turned 18, I told them, don't give me anything, don't pay for my college, I'll work myself through college. And so you can't have any power over me. And since then, I have been uncomfortable accepting help from people. If they do something for me, I feel like I owe them double back of what they gave to me.
Why the fuck is it so hard to talk to Asian parents, especially if they're fucking closed-minded? I swear to God, like, I'm tired of having my hobbies, like, being shamed by my dad. My mom's totally fine. She doesn't care if I cosplay. But my dad's, like just acting like a fucking TikTok comment section, if, for a lack of a better term. Like, sir, I will literally change my last name to my mom so quick if you piss me off. But yeah, like, I literally had to get one of my friends to write me a whole paragraph, and most likely I have to translate it into Chinese and just send it to him, and then block his number, and avoid him at all costs. The only leverage I have is that my mom supports this, and so does my grandparents. Like, everyone else but him supports it. So that's the only leverage I have. So yeah, wish me luck, guys, because I have a convention coming up this weekend. So yeah, I'm going to Fan Expo.
The worst thing you can do in a toxic Desi household is tell the truth. They could misbehave, tarnish the family name, even commit a crime, and no one's gonna bat an eye. But if you speak out against their wrongdoings and address the toxic behaviors and patterns, they'll start seeing you like you're the devil. Like hell, they'll even start treating you like you're the Antichrist. So when somebody speaks up and tells the truth in a toxic Desi household, they're in a way putting a mirror in front of everybody. And the toxic family members hate to see their own reflections.
I made a video about how Asian friend groups are toxic because of their parents always comparing them against each other, but then I realized that the parents also went through the same thing as well. So I was wondering what could cause this trend, which is almost a cultural thing for Asians, where parents are always comparing their children against each other. I think I know why this happens, and it came from a book called Hawaii by James A. Michener. And basically, a lot of Asian families were poor, and they lived in clan-style family units, where the cousins, the brothers and sisters are all living amongst each other with their aunts and uncles in the same like village at least, or the same building. And a lot of times these Asian families are very poor, and in order to elevate the family altogether, they needed to send their children off to college. And because they're poor, they can only send a few children off to college, so they'll always send the most promising child to these colleges. And obviously the parents would want their children to be sent to college over their cousins or relatives. So this is where the competition is created. Parents would obviously want to vouch for their kids to be sent to college over their cousins. So once the most promising child is selected to go to college, the whole clan will pull their money all together, all their savings, to send that one kid to college in hopes that they'll come back and lift the family out of poverty. Now, I could be talking out of my butt because I read this from a nonfiction book that made sense to me, but it might not make sense to you guys, so just take it for a grain of salt. And I do think that clan-style families can still benefit immigrants, especially generation 1, 2 in America, because it's very hard to get a foothold in America as immigrants. And I think clan-style families is a good way to preserve generational wealth in the form of a family managed trust. And the reason why I think Asians heavily focus on academics is also because of this one man called Confucius. So yeah, there's a lot more reasons why Asian parents are toxic to their children and like to compare their children to other children. But I just mentioned this clan style family reason because I just thought it was really interesting. Okay, if you reached it this far, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Give me a like and a follow, please, and comment why you think Asian parents are toxic.
Grew up in Korea. My parents were very strict and also very abusive. So I also followed them and did the same thing to my kids. But I realized I was wrong. America is not the same. He said then he realized as a father I was wrong. I should have spoke to you guys and fellowship more and had more communication, but I couldn't. So this was my life lesson.
I'm going to talk about something a lot of Asians don't like talking about. And it's because we're taught to be private in our family affairs. And I'm just that one Asian that speaks up about it. A lot of Asian households are extremely toxic, so toxic at a level of nuclear. They're so abusive. They will whoop the fuck and living shit out of you. No one talks about this. If you ever saw an Asian person growing up in high school that's very quiet, probably came from an abusive household. They're probably getting beat the fuck out of. Get beat for existing. If you didn't get beat with a fucking vacuum wire, telephone cords, broomsticks, knives thrown at you, got thrown at by a cleaver, then you're really lucky. I see a lot of Asians now as making that shift to change things. We are not allowing the same childhood that we had within our children. A lot of us went through hell and had nobody to talk to. We go through life learning lessons the hard way.
Vietnamese parents rarely say sorry, which is why growing up, I thought our culture was pretty toxic. Hearing the word xin lỗi was as rare as getting an F in a math test for me, because otherwise my parents would have whooped my ass. And as a kid raised in the West, I was confused why they can't just say sorry, until I understood that in our culture, apology is not verbal. It's expressed through action. Instead of saying sorry directly, your mom brings you a plate of fruit and says, "Con ăn nhiều hoa quả vào," and your relatives don't apologize for a rude comment. Instead, they buy you some pants or shoes that you always want, and although you're really pissed, eventually you forgive them. Contrary to what I thought, the warmth was always there. I was just judging their Vietnamese behavior through a Western lens. If your parents never say sorry, try to not be mad at them too much. Just know that they are sorry, they just express it differently.
山对山来爱对爱，蜜蜂采花深山来，蜜蜂本为采花子，两山花为祝英台，一啦两。
Yep, time to go. That motherfucker coming over here. Ooh, shit. Hey, Carlo, bitch, look behind you. Ooh, shit, motherfucker.
Free Sudan, boycott diamonds and gold. Free Sudan, boycott diamonds and gold. We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan.
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.